Beyond Condition podcast, the voice of bodybuilding. And today's voice is Dr. Effie Zion. And actually, I'm saying the voice of bodybuilding for the podcast, but when we look on Instagram, your name is the bodybuilding psychologist. So it works very well for our episode today. And of course, thank you for your time, first of all, Effie.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's the for me, the joy of Instagram is actually the ability to connect with either like-minded people or,
Mm,
potentially people that can inspire us, share our journey because, and I'm sure we'll speak about this in the episode around limiting beliefs. Social media can actually have quite a bad rap for so many reasons, but we sometimes forget
mm,
positives, of course. I'm sure you'll agree.
mm, absolutely. But I do love the way that we can all connect and find like-minded people in the same industry, same community. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. And for I guess we could kick off there actually with the social media side of things and
Mm,
that, this is going to be multifaceted when we talk about the limiting beliefs in and what we can face as a person and or, bodybuilder and competitor. Would you
mm,
say that, when you're actually following people, when you're, essentially populating what you see,
mm.
if if people have got to that point, if we go for the extreme of where people got to that
Yes.
point where they're following so many people
Yeah.
and they're almost at that point where it's overwhelm of I don't know who
Mm,
to delete. I don't know how to
mm,
sort of clear out my. Have you got any
mm.
sort of advice if people are in that spot and they're listening?
Yes. Yeah. It can be really difficult to shut out the noise when there's so much of it. and and you just need to really be mindful of yourself. Is it helping you, or is it actually kind of sucking the life out of you? And I often say, look at follow accounts that inspire you and excite you, and maybe even motivate you. But if you're finding that you're comparing yourself too much and it's actually dragging you down, and you think, oh, I don't look as good as them, or I'm not progressing as quickly as them, um, that's a sign to either do a little social media detox, or maybe just not follow some people for a little while, just sort of clean your mind of it, because at the end of the day, there's often too much noise because you're listening to too much noise. So you've got to pick and choose what you pay attention to.
Sort of feels quite ruthless at times, doesn't it? But
Mm,
it as well, I think sometimes we're thinking, oh, we're only going to get that good dopamine hit if it's people that we
mm,
get inspired by. But actually, there's this almost like you get a dopamine hit from hating on people as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like
mm, mm,
and you
mm,
sort of, almost because you know
mm,
what it's like. I'm sure people listen and they're, look at someone on social media and go, they've failed. That makes me feel good. And that's not a good, that's
mm. Yeah,
that's good energy for yourself either. If
yeah, yes, yeah, very toxic. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we transfer this into, actual people in life, and this is something I explore a lot on the podcast anyway, essentially stepping away from certain people if you notice it's not serving you. I'd really like to
Mm,
get your take on that as well. Again, this could be multifaceted with who it is you're stepping away from, but when people are in these toxic relationships and they're struggling to
mm,
even, shout up a little bit or even then eventually step away.
mm,
Have you got
mm,
sort of, when you work with people and you're noticing this and it's actually someone in their environment that's bringing them
mm.
back and maybe causing the limiting beliefs? Do you have sort of a system in place or something you do that you work with clients to help them do that and actualize it?
Yeah, look, I've dealt with this in my own personal life too, as well as with clients. But I'll start general and then we can get more specific. But I think the most important thing, of course, is communication. And I think sometimes people drag us down, maybe because they don't understand us, they don't understand our goals, where we're coming from. And if you express, let's say, if it is, a common thing, because I work with bodybuilders, a common thing is unfortunately partners not understanding the journey. It's quite extreme. It is extreme. And if you're waiting till you're 6 weeks out to explain, what's involved, um, that's not a good idea. So, it's important that you express why it's actually important to you, how it's actually helping your life and, improving your life, so that they have an opportunity to empathize with you and understand all of that, tell them what it involves. And obviously, if you give people, that are important to you in your life, that information, they're more likely to understand you, hopefully support you. They don't have to really understand it, but it's enough for them to accept that it's important to you to hopefully at least be able to support you. If they don't, then you need to take a good hard look at whether those people are compatible to you, whether that's a partner, whether that's a friend. Obviously, we want to have people in our life that are going to support us and uplift us, and if they're not, sometimes that is an opportunity to find out, who you align with and who you don't. Sometimes it is those situations, and it's not easy to let go of some people that may be toxic, in your life. Sometimes we really get used to it. We go on autopilot and, we just keep going, but it drags us down. So I was talking about how I mentioned briefly, like that, I had my own personal experience. I was in an emotionally abusive marriage for 13 years, and I took a lot of courage to leave that because I was used to it. But, I did it, and like I'm free of that now, and it's the most amazing thing. And so I know what it's like to be really weighed down by, toxicity in your life, but it can be done. So it's not easy, but it can be done.
I I am going to actually expand on that. The listeners will already know, but it's such a similar scenario. We could actually probably expand on it together for I have had people reach out and say, I've managed to step away from my husband hearing your story. And that in itself, for me, it's like, well, that impact. So if we could speak about it a little bit more. So for myself, it
Sure.
was 11 years. And again, an emotionally abusive marriage.
Wow.
And as you said, you don't really even know it's going on a lot of the time. You're
Mm,
sort of, it becomes habit. You're so used to, and I'd love to expand on this in regards to I felt I was very much in a victim mindset. So I was
mm,
like,
mm,
I'm not prepared to do anything because I'm staying. I'm staying. So I'm allowing this
mm,
to happen. And
mm,
honestly, Effie, every day it was like, I'm gonna
mm,
leave. I'm gonna leave for years.
mm,
And
mm.
and that transferred him into my whole life, but that also brought me bodybuilding because it gave me something. And
Yeah.
that in itself led to a lot of neuroticism, etc., which I've worked on now. But I mean, it's wild, isn't it, that we stay?
Mm,
Like
mm,
it's
mm,
quite hard to quantify when you look back, isn't it? I'm sure you get it. You
mm,
look back and you think, wow, that was such a large portion of my life.
Absolutely. But sometimes it's just easier to do what's familiar to you, even if it's not helpful.
Yeah. It I don't know if you would resonate sort of that safety of like I'm married. I mean, we had a
Mm,
house.
mm,
It's like this is, and the I guess the phrase that I always used to remember it. Well, no marriage is perfect. You've got to compromise. So I'm like,
mm,
okay,
mm,
maybe this is normal. And
mm,
that resentment that builds over time,
mm, mm,
and it almost turns you toxic. Would you agree?
mm. Oh, absolutely. It brings out characteristics in you that you didn't even think were you. Yeah. Well done for leaving your situation. I'm so pleased for you.
Well, you too. As soon as you said it, I thought it'd be great to sort of actually, because this is the thing with podcasts, isn't it? There's a lot of power in if someone's listening and they go,
Mm,
I share this scenario.
mm,
Actually, how have these two women stepped away from that scenario that I'm in? And I've actually
mm,
spoken about it, obviously more so on the podcast, but would you
mm.
say for yourself, to help anyone that is listening, was there certain steps you noticed now you reflect back, or was it like a I'm leaving and you sort of went? How did that, if you don't mind talking about it, of
Sure.
course.
So how I came about leaving in the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, look, it was bubbling away for a long time, and I got used to a lot of the behaviors that I was enduring. But I was feeling so stressed by everything, and there was a lot of gaslighting going on. So I was kind of like, is this really happening? Is it not happening? Am I going crazy? And so I sort of kept pushing, but I didn't feel right. Something just didn't feel right. And as a consequence of that, I lost a lot of weight from stress. I just couldn't eat. And what actually happened was that because I lost a lot of weight, it was very noticeable. And you see, I didn't tell anybody what was going on. I kept it to myself and just pretended everything's okay. But in a way, losing that weight saved me because it was noticeable. My family noticed and, called me up one day. I did see them relatively regularly, and it was my parents, and they said, something's wrong. We don't know what it is, but we want to talk to you about it. We think it's something at home. And I was like, how do you know? And and I didn't want to say anything even at that point. But the awful thing is at the time, my first thought was, oh my God, how can I hide it better? How could I hide it better? So, to cut a long story short, I went and I spoke to them. I initially didn't say anything. I just listened to all their concerns and observations, and I couldn't believe all these things they noticed that I thought no one noticed. And eventually, the thing that really helped was that they said to me, Effie, whatever it is, we've got your back. And I thought, oh my God, okay. Even though I didn't say anything at the time, I just thought, okay, I'm going to have support. I'll be okay. Because I was scared, of course. How am I going to cope? And I've got children, and how would I cope with them? And all of that. And that gave me that little push that I needed and the courage. And, a few days after that, I just said, it's over. You clearly don't want to be here, the way you're behaving towards me. And let's figure out how this separation thing works. And that was that. That was that.
I think as well, well, I know the way you've spoken about that, the power in people. Now,
Mm,
when we're in these scenarios, and this goes for the subject today, the limiting beliefs, we can lose faith in people. And
mm,
I
mm,
feel like, when you are let down, maybe over your whole life by person after person after person, or, you invest a lot in someone and that doesn't work out, you end up, going through these cycles of different people and you're thinking, how am I going to find my people? But like you said there, it doesn't necessarily have to be your parents, but
mm.
it could be if you're able to gain support from
Yeah, it
some,
could be anyone.
yeah, and that's what I always say to
Mm,
people, the first
mm,
step is acknowledgement. Now we could, both of us probably acknowledged it many, many years ago, but it took time to accept and process. And you go through these thoughts of like, what would it look like if I stepped away from the home? What would it look like if and all
mm,
of that, and you
mm,
sort of,
mm,
and then it's,
mm,
what are you gonna do about it? And that's, I think,
mm,
of
mm.
course, that big step. But once, whatever
Yeah.
that flip of the switch is, like you had, and I had a,
Mm,
a flip of the switch in my mind, it's like, I'm ready now. It's quite
mm,
it's like an epiphany, isn't it, Effie? It's like, oh,
mm.
I'm taking
Yes.
control.
Yes. Yes.
And it's, I guess as well, after that, what can sort of come when you're, did you find you sort of were grieving the marriage, or did you go through sort of ebbs and flows of how you felt after that, or was it quite sort of cut and you were on your
No,
neutral?
I think what I was grieving was more like the story in my head. It was like I had this picture, well, not story, so more of a picture in my head of this is how my life would look like. This is who I'm going to get old with, that sort of thing. And all of a sudden, it changed, and that's what I had to kind of reframe in my mind. I also had this kind of this stigma in my head of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be single mom, I'm going to be this divorced woman, and how embarrassing. And and then the ironic thing is that because it took so much courage to actually end it, and it felt so amazing once I did, that being a divorced woman, a single mom, is one of the things I'm the most proud of in the world. It's not at all something I'm embarrassed about. I'm like, I'm in this position because I had the courage to end something toxic. Not many people can end something toxic in their life.
Feeds into our own narrative, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
what will the world think of me if I get,
Mm.
if I, you know, and also when you don't tell anyone, everyone thinks you're leading this, perfect life, as it were, married and
Yeah.
house and for your children, etc. And it's
Mm.
like, I guess as well, and there's that like identity shift. So who are we when we're not in
Mm.
this environment? And when you do you work with people that sort of, I know you work with competitors. When people come away from stage, do you work with people that have this identity crisis when they're
Oh,
sort of,
absolutely. Yeah. Not knowing who they are without it. Yeah.
yeah, because that's again, do you find that you work with the sort of acceptance of it and then what life looks like, or do you have sort of a framework that you go through with people that are retiring as such?
Yeah, I think the thing is, from the very beginning, to know that you're not just a bodybuilder. There's a lot more to you, and that's not the only. I mean, it's just not the thing that you are. It's something you do. You do bodybuilding. You're not just a bodybuilder. So it's to kind of have some balance in your life, and look at all the different things that make up your life, and making sure that you dedicate time to those things. And obviously, if you are competing and you're in prep, then some chunks of your life would get a bit less attention, as you get close to being on stage. But that's okay. It's just remembering that there are other things that make up your life, and you can go back to it. You can set new goals. Yeah, there's a lot of bits that make up our identity.
Yeah, because it is certainly from people I speak to, it is that grieving that we've spoken about in a different scenario of,
Yeah.
and if have you come across people that have got almost pushed out of it by injury or finances or things where they've had to sort of be forced to step away from stage? Is that have you worked with anyone that is in that scenario as well?
Yeah. So, some people have had to, I guess find other roles in the the field, whether it's being coach, or supporting someone else, going through that. So I think that's the other thing too. I mean, sometimes I think about it for myself. For now, I want to compete for as long as my body will allow me. But I think in the future, I mean, whatever shape or form I can be involved in the sport, because I love it and it's added so much value to my life. And just doing this work too is one way. So I think, yeah, it's just important to, I guess, find what you like about it, what you enjoy, and ways you can still continue it in whatever way. And you can continue to train, of course, in whatever way you can. There's other body parts that, if you injured your legs, there's still your upper body. So, it's not all or nothing.
Mm. Yeah, it is as well. It's that acceptance, isn't it? It's like that I'm gonna have to hold back from, like you say, if it's lower body, I can still do some upper body. I can still look at things I can do and expanding that mindset because
Mm.
I truly believe that a lot of people listening, if they do get in this scenario where they injure themselves or something, you can surprise yourself how strong you are mentally from the bodybuilding that you're doing all the time.
Mm.
There's nothing I can do here. I'm injured. Let's
Mm.
reframe this and see what I
Mm.
can do. But again,
Mm.
that could hold you back if you go into this negative mindset of why has this happened to me? This is not fair.
Yes.
These things that are
Yeah.
associated, that feeds into that. And something I wanted to talk to you about was negative self-talk and how essentially that's gonna hold us back. When
Mm.
you look at negative self-talk as that, so of course it's how we talk to ourselves.
Yes.
How would you say, I guess the way to frame this question would be, how can you sort of catch yourself? Because I don't know if people actually realize
Yes. Yeah.
how you see where I'm going with this.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost like, would you say we've got to call ourselves out on our own bullshit sometimes? That type of, how do we understand how much that's impacting us when we are constantly detrimental to ourselves?
Yeah. So the quickest way to realize that you're doing it is by how you're feeling. If you're feeling anxious, stressed, sad, um, overwhelmed, anything like that, that's a signal to you that the way you're thinking about things is not helpful, right? So our emotions are there to guide us. They're there to tell us if we're on track or not. So it's this is how we evolved, right? I mean, when you were in the forest hunting for food, and you were in fight or flight, that's anxiety. That's because you think in the situation that you're facing is dangerous. And so your body responded that way. Now, if we look at it in reverse and we look, okay, the body's reacting in a certain way, it's panicking, the heart's racing, that's telling you you're anxious. So you might then go back, okay, what's going through my mind that's making me so worked up? Okay, I'm thinking there's a danger here. That's why I'm feeling like this, right? Now, if that's not something that is actually really happening, it's just a perception, then okay, you can start to break that down and work through that. If it is really happening, okay, run. um, but that's the thing. So it's first noticing how you're feeling, and just asking yourself some questions like, what's going through my mind that's making me feel like this? Did something just happen? What did I just do? Did I just talk to someone? That you can ask yourself a bit like a little detective, ask yourself these little questions and then see what you come up with. It helps to write it down as well so you can see it visually in front of you. And once you do that, then the next thing would be to really ask yourself, okay, is this just a perception I've got? Is this a speculation or an assumption, or is this based on truth or facts? So to look at where that's coming from. So that's the process. So you won't always necessarily come up with it. You may just notice that you're anxious or uncomfortable in some way, and that's okay. It might not come to you straight away. But even just noticing that and acknowledging that, okay, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable. Let me just watch that. Let me monitor what's going on for me, see what you notice, and gradually you'll figure it out.
It is, it's a journey, isn't it? A lot of the time,
Mm,
people,
mm,
I believe there's that misconception that, sometimes people around you are going to say, just get on with it,
mm,
ignore those feelings. But I'm sure you work with people, and I have, and I've
mm,
had it with my own mother. It's the anxieties when taken to the extreme, as it were, into, panic attack, etc.
mm,
I
mm.
mean, it when my mum first had a panic attack in front of me, I thought she was having a heart attack.
Of
I
course.
thought my mum's died here. Now that gave
Mm.
me real life insight into going, this is not like I can't just say, Mum, just chill out. It's
Yes,
not as
yes,
easy as that. But it
yeah.
wasn't until I sort of, what it's like, until you see something firsthand, you maybe don't understand the severity of that. And
Mm,
anyone that is again tying into the toxic people and what you want to do, where
mm,
you're going in life. If people are telling you to do something and ignore your feelings, I think that sometimes that's a level of toxicity. If they know that you're an anxious person, if you know what I mean.
mm, mm, mm.
Because that's the sort of emotional side to it, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's like this
yeah,
person's pretending to help you.
yes, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing too is, sometimes you won't know why you're feeling the way you're feeling, but it might be your environment, So you're like we talked about toxic people, so it might be that you're around someone that just you just don't feel right, around them. Something about that energy, or or some people, for example, social anxiety, might not like to admit it, but they just feel totally drained and overwhelmed in social environments or crowded or noisy places. So there's all different factors. So, if you at least notice that not necessarily a particular thought, but you notice, okay, every time I'm in this particular environment, I feel this way. Okay, you're starting to establish some patterns that you can, observe a bit more.
And I don't think I've ever asked to guess this before, actually, Effie. With anxiety, is that something that, over time, yes, it can get more manageable. Have you got examples of people you've worked with that have sort of had very bad anxiety and they've almost not got it as much any like that sort of path to healing? Is it something essentially, I'm not saying is there a cure, as it were,
Mm,
but is it
mm,
if someone's listening and they're like,
mm,
they're in a very anxious state a lot of the time, essentially to give them a bit of hope and maybe that this is
mm,
possible. What would your words be to if someone's listening and they are, very much in this anxious state a lot of the time?
mm. Okay, first of all, absolutely there are ways to work on it. That's why there's psychologists out there, and there's doctors out there as well. If you need to go down the medication side of things, but absolutely there are strategies to deal with it. It's just important to do it from a very holistic approach. And what I mean by that, it's we need to look at your body, your mind, and your thoughts. And what I mean by mind and thoughts is that, we need to look at what's happening in your body, like help you relax your body, teach you ways to kind of not be so like aroused in your body, calm yourself down. We need to look at where your mind's going, in different situations, like what you're focusing your attention on. And then we need to look at the actual specific thoughts that go through your mind, and are they realistic, or are they just, like I said, based on assumptions or speculations? So, what I find actually quite amazing is when I start working with people on anxiety, is we always start with the body, because it's what I find amazing is that as soon as your body relaxes, the mind follows. It's just easy to think more clearly and rationally when you're not, so like on edge, right? A bit like what I said with the fight or flight, right? If you sort of first relax, then it's like, okay, what's actually going on here? I'm not in danger. I'm okay. I'm safe. And that's actually what happens. When your body relaxes, it tells your brain that you're safe, that you're okay. And then you can start to really, I guess, figure out what you were thinking about, and how to work through it. So that's just in general how you work on it. But the point is that there are lots of strategies. I've just highlighted some, but there are lots of different therapies and techniques. So absolutely, you can work on it.
Certainly something, isn't it? If you do whatever it is your struggle is, you can just find yourself feeling like there's no way out, as it were. And
Mm.
everything we've spoken about even already, a lot of those things are going to tie into that step forward into asking for help a lot of the time.
Yes, yes,
There's a
yeah.
lot of reasons that might hold you back, even maybe a financial standpoint, right? Like if you've just done a whole prep as a fictitious example,
Yes.
and you're suddenly like, right, I don't have much money there. But I do believe from what I've looked at myself, to help clients, etc., as an additional
Mm.
support, there are sort of free resources as well when
Mm.
you're
Mm.
starting to, take this path as well. Do you have that in Australia
Mm.
also?
Yeah, there are free resources. There are sort of some clinics that people can go to that are funded, by the government here. There are also programs where some fees are subsidised, so they're not, yeah, it's expensive. But also just even just as a place to start, I was saying about relaxation. There's like free YouTube videos that you can watch just to at least help you get started with that side of things, just to show you that you can change how you're feeling, in your body. But there is help out there, and I think people just need to ask for that help, because I think that's one of the reasons why, unfortunately, why people can have anxiety for a long time, because they don't ask for help. We often rush to get help when it's a physical injury or something like that. Unfortunately, for mental, we don't. We kind of think we can figure it out and time will heal and things like that. Time doesn't heal. Strategies heal. It's doing something different that helps.
Yeah, because it can build into, and again, I'd like to expand on your thoughts here, but from what I've observed from working with a multitude of different people, sometimes it becomes habitual, a bit like when we were talking
Mm.
about, being in a victim mindset. It
Mm.
becomes habitual that you think this scenario is going to be terrible because I've experienced it before, so I can't tackle it again. So I'm gonna, the habit is that every time I step into
Mm.
that scenario, my anxiety is going to go through the roof. And that is, multifaceted across anxiety in general. I guess what I'm saying is I've seen that it can be heightened because you're already assuming that.
Yes, you're anticipating it. Yeah.
Yeah, is
Yeah.
there parts of, from your psychology background, is there parts to breaking that barrier as well?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's, realizing every situation is different. This is not. Sometimes I say in a really simple way that it's not maths. It's not like one. How 1 + 1 = 2. In this particular case, just because something happened to you once in a particular situation, it does not mean it's going to happen to you again. And unfortunately, if people keep avoiding situations that they're anxious of or fearful of, they'll continue to make this association in their mind that if I go, it's bad. If I don't go, I'm good. I'm okay, right? So it's really learning ways, again, to regulate yourself, to calm yourself down, so that you have some tools to make it a little bit easier to face it. It's also accepting that you're probably going to be a bit nervous, a bit anxious when you face something again that you've avoided, and that's fine. You're not going to die from anxiety, right? Right. You saw your mum have a panic attack. She didn't die from it, thankfully, But that's the thing. You don't die from anxiety. You don't. It's based on emotion. So we don't die. So you can still do many things even when you're uncomfortable. And once you know how like sometimes we don't want to go somewhere, and then once you're there, as you warm up to the situation, you're okay. That's the same thing. So you need to just get over that first little step, and then you warm up to it.
It's a bit like your first time on stage, isn't it?
Mm,
It's sort of like that. I mean,
mm,
it's the unknown, and that's
yes,
about sort of repeated environments there, but flipping it on its head, it's sometimes the unknown that drives so much
yes,
worry, anxiety, overwhelm. And actually, the post that I basically reached out to you from was, because you have mental health struggles, because that's a thing for you, it doesn't mean that you can't compete. And that's why I reached out to you, because it's like this episode was born from that, because what
mm,
and again, it's like even the thought of the end being stepping on stage, that could stop
mm,
someone from going on the journey of their life, couldn't it?
mm, mm. Yeah,
It's,
yeah,
it's
that's right.
sort of I mean, I label fear as fictitious because a lot of the things we self-impose, it's like you're not going to die. Like you see, I like that example because a lot
Yes,
of times,
yes,
but I'm not going
yeah.
to. If I do die, that's my time to go, sort of thing. And I know that's maybe a bit of a brash way to say it, but
Mm,
when you are working with people, because I've seen that you work with people for sort of a pre-prep
yes,
preparation
as well. Yes.
to go into it. What does that involve? I'd love to hear a little bit more from your side about it.
Yeah. So what that really involves is looking at for helping people establish why they want to compete. That's really the main aim of that. Because what happens is that sometimes people compete not for the wrong reasons, because everyone's got their own reasons, but some reasons are not sustainable to get through a long prep. It's not like you decide one day and tomorrow you're on stage. There's a lot you have to deal with, and a lot you need to do, and it's going to get hard. And if you don't know why you're doing it, then it's going to be very tricky to keep going. So if people's whys are based on external factors, so validation from other people, recognition, having a sense of self-worth by stepping on stage, just wanting to look a certain way, those sorts of things, that's not going to be sustainable. That is very hard to keep a prep going just for those reasons. So it really needs to be something more internal. It needs to be about what really matters to you as a person. What sort of person do you want to be? So really your values. So, if, for example, it's important for you to be someone that is disciplined, that is consistent, that's hardworking, you want to learn about yourself, self growth, that sort of thing. You want to become more resilient. If those kind of like qualities and those values are important to you, yeah, doing a bodybuilding comp can absolutely help you be more of that person. So it's really, yeah, that's the first step to really get people to establish, why they want to do it. Having some tools to be able to get through it. So things like visualizing, their prep journey, visualizing, being able to do it, because if you can see it in your mind, you're more likely to do it in reality. Just things like that. So I've got like a little masterclass that people can do that I call Commit to Compete, and I teach all these different little strategies they can follow, and just to give them that groundwork, to be ready.
It's a pre-prep.
Yes, exactly.
Preparation. It is as
Yeah.
well. It's going back to your why. I personally
Mm,
feel like, and again, this is not going to be everyone's character. I understand that, and how everyone is, but I was like an excitable puppy when I first got into book. I mean, I still very much am, as you can tell.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
when it's your thing. Like, I mean, it's such power, isn't it, Effie? Even in the
Mm,
of a prep when you're, I mean, a lot of us are going to extremes, right? You said that at the
mm,
start, it is extreme, but there's something within that keeps you going. And as you say, that resilience and what you can
yeah.
build, and that transfers into your personal life, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean about it's the sort of person you want to be.
How you frame that. And
Mm,
when you then, so if people were to do your masterclass, because it might be that people are listening and they're interested also,
mm.
then does the support carry on through the prep? How do you sort of structure that for your services as well?
Yeah. So you start off, there's even one step before that, which is a prep checklist. It's like a mental prep. I call it mental prep checklist. So there's, just things to check before you start a prep to say that you are mentally ready. That's a free resource that they can get. And then the step after that would be to do this masterclass. Then what would happen is you would start your prep. Now, if you're struggling throughout the prep, then normally I see people one-to-one for that, because it can be very individual, the different things that they struggle with. And so whether it's, and it's a range of things from, stage fright to food relationship and eating, and so sticking to prep, right? Then we've got post-comp issues. So I'm currently in the creating something for the post-comp phase as well. That will be sort of like a mini course, but again, it would still be quite general. And there's so many individual, differences and different reasons why people struggle. Sometimes it's other things in their life, that go on. So yeah, so it's the masterclass at the moment is a way for you to start and have some groundwork that you do, and then yeah, if other things come up, so important to get that help, because unfortunately, your bodybuilding coach can only help you so much. They're there to motivate you, give you a plan, but they can't really help you so much if you're struggling mentally, and particularly if it's food relationship and your disciplines, stress, anxiety gets in the way. There's only so much that they can help you with. So that's where I come in.
It's something that, as a bodybuilding coach myself, it from when I started, I had a lot of time to think about, right, I'm definitely going to do this. This is what I want to do in my life. And I'm lucky enough to I have Emily, who's someone that I work in tandem with when it's food relationship side of things. So as a
Amazing.
support for my clients, and I've also got clients that also have a psychologist that they work with separately to, potentially trauma or something that they're doing. And so I wholeheartedly agree.
Terrific.
What I find difficult in this space is when it's ignored and people are just
Mm.
pushed into,
Sweep it under the rug. Mm.
yeah, and what can come from that. You can imagine the horror stories. Nearly 3 years of the podcast, it's crazy what people find themselves in the scenarios, and a lot of the time it's built up through the prep, and then it's that post prep. It's like shit, all of these things have accrued over a prep because
Mm.
isn't it? You are. A lot of the things we're doing in a prep do relate heavily to food disorder behaviors, and we can't
Mm.
get away from that, and if you're of a certain nature, I'm not saying it's going to turn into a food disorder, but this is, I think, the back to the post that you did, there's that assumption that if you've got a food disorder or if you've got mental struggles or if there's something, you shouldn't do the bodybuilding. And something I want to ask you today is, I actually had a guest on that said to me, if someone's got a food disorder or a mental health, problem as such, actually the bodybuilding can save them in regards to it funnels what they're struggling with. It's actually a lifeline rather
Mm.
than the opposite and it making it worse. Do you know what I mean by that? I
Mm.
want to sort of hear
Mm.
your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah, look, it is quite individual, but generally speaking, absolutely it can help you. I mean, one of the ways to deal with depression is for people to have a goal, something to work on to improve themselves. So when you're working on something to improve yourself, whatever it may be, it can absolutely help you. It gives you another focus. You're not putting such a magnifying glass on other things that are getting you down, but it's not something you can use as a crutch to run away from your problems.
This is
this is
the
this is where we need to differentiate it, right? So you can't just use it like that, because as you know, many people, I've in the past used it loosely myself, but now I don't. And it's the phrase that we say, gym is my therapy,
yeah.
right? We say it often, right? We say it quite loosely, but we have to be careful of that, because gym is not therapy. It's not going to solve your problems. It's a distraction from your problems. It helps release endorphins, and so you feel better. Also, it releases some dopamine because it's like a reward. You've done something for yourself. You feel good about it. So it helps in all of those ways. But it's an adjunct. It's not what will actually solve everything, but it absolutely will help on the journey. So if you're struggling with mental health, then You still need therapy, you still need to do all the things, but I also see people outside of bodybuilding in another setting, just more clinical setting, and I basically prescribe exercise as one of the things. I said this is like another antidepressant. You need to do it. It's going to release some happy chemicals that will help you. It's free. It's free to exercise. You don't have to go to a gym. So it's free. It's readily available, and anybody can do it.
That's the huge part as well with bodybuilding. It's like really, generally speaking, if you can work hard and you can do the thing day in, day out, it's accessible to so many people.
Mm,
Got to be able to do the thing.
yes.
Even people that do, not do it as committed maybe as others, you still can step on stage, right? So it's like it is accessible, but
Mm,
it is sometimes those limiting beliefs that hold us back, which are, as we've explored, multifaceted. And on the other end of the spectrum, as it were, do you work with high achievers that even when they win the show, they win the pro card, they're doing really well, they're still not maybe in that moment of like, shit, I've done really well here, that they're always sort of going on to the next thing?
oh yeah, many people do. Yeah, think of the next goal and don't take a moment to just to chill and enjoy the moment. And there's pros and cons to that. It's nothing wrong with being a high achiever and keep on aiming towards things, but we just need to be careful not to burn ourselves out, and to just take that time for a break, and then come back fresh and think again, is this definitely something I want to do? Is this something I want to do soon? Or should I take some time? Also, because as I said, sometimes people do use it as a crutch. So we need to just be careful that we don't just compete over and over again just to avoid things.
Done that. It's a very good distraction because you're just going through these multiple phases, and that I believe that's why I said at the start I thought bodybuilding saved me, but I reframed it, and you're going to relate to this. I can feel it. It enabled me to save myself because it gave me something outside of I am worthy. I've got
Mm,
this thing,
mm.
and that helped me. Did it actually help you with coming away from your ex-husband? When did you sort of formulate your bodybuilding and your competing? It'd be interested to know about that.
Yeah, so I started bodybuilding later in life, and it was after my marriage ended. And the way that it actually started for me, see, I had no fitness background whatsoever. I was not really sporty even as a kid or anything, just dabbled in different sports and different fitness classes as an adult. And because I've got children as well, like during my marriage, a lot of my time and energy was spent looking after them and my clients at work. And that was, again, more clinical setting, not with bodybuilders at the time. And, that all my energy went to that. I hardly had any time for myself. So thinking of going to a gym or anything like that didn't even cross my mind. It was just like it seemed like there's no time. What happened was that once I left that marriage, and as I said, I felt so much better mentally for doing that. It took me, I suppose, like let's say a year after the marriage ended to really feel much stronger mentally. And I was just doing more for myself. It's amazing how all of a sudden, you know, um, I'm a single mum and I have more time for myself. Like, and it's because I'm, getting a babysitter now, and I'm somehow budgeting for that and things like that. So I started seeing friends and going out more, feeling more like myself, discovering myself again. And one day, a kind of a thought entered my mind, now that I'm stronger mentally, I want to be stronger physically. I sort of felt like I want to match how I feel mentally with my body. And I also, in my particular situation, I'm actually like a solo mum. My ex-husband's, he's not in the picture, and so I'm looking after the children on my own. And I sort of felt I'm the man and woman of the house now. I need to be strong. Um, so um, I basically I thought, okay, I'll join a gym, and my eyes just popped out of my skull seeing all the machines there. I got so excited by everything I could do. I just had like a trainer initially show me around, and I just had a very simple program that I followed, but I absolutely loved it. I went every single day without fail. And then what happened is COVID hit, and the gym's closed. And I'm in Melbourne, Australia. We had like the longest lockdown, I think, like in the world. The gyms were closed for over a year. And so I just started doing exercises from like an app that I found, and, got little dumbbells, resistance bands, whatever I could do at home just to keep it going, because I was craving those endorphins after getting so used to having them every day. And what happened then was that during COVID, I dabbled in some online dating, and I met a wonderful man who's now my partner, and he was actually into bodybuilding and just for himself. And he compared it when he was in his early 20s, but that's it. But he kind of, would see me training, and he was like, "God, you look like you build on muscle quickly. You should think about competing." And I thought, what are you talking about? I'm not going to stand up on a stage in a bikini and go completely out of my comfort zone. That's completely absurd. But what happened was, you kind of planted a seed in my head, and that seed began to grow. And I started thinking, actually, you know what? That is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out of my comfort zone, do something I would never do in a million years, because I think it would actually help me to to do that. I'm in this like self-growth kind of phase of my life, where I'm doing all these new things. So I'll do that. So I started looking up coaches. I didn't even know where to look. I wasn't even hardly on social media. I had to Google it, and I found, and I thought I also wanted to see someone in person to train me properly. And I found someone, and I met with them the day that the gyms reopened here in Melbourne, and I've been with that same coach ever since. So I'm still with her like 4.5 years later, or about 4 years later. And the first day she met me, she said, "Well, okay, what's the goal?" And I said, "I want to compete." And I just thought, let's see if she'll laugh at me or what she'll say. She's like, "Okay, then that's what we're going to do." And so we just started training hard, and and she guided me on nutrition. I just had no clue, and it was amazing. And what I learned as I was embarking on this is that here I was thinking, okay, I'm already stronger mentally, I just need to be stronger physically now. What I didn't realize at the time was that as you push yourself to get stronger physically, you have to use your mind. And so you end up getting even stronger mentally then, right? Because you've got to push through pain and discomfort, and then throughout the whole comp prep as well, with the dieting and everything. So I realized, that you just become more resilient in that whole process. And I thought, God, I have to teach other people how to do this. And then as I met more competitors, and got more into the bodybuilding community, what I realized was there's such a gap between mental health and competing. There's many people that struggle and don't have the tools. Here I was gradually applying just tools that I kind of knew about, but I thought I'm going to teach other people how to do this well, and not let mental health get in the way, and really be empowered by this journey. And so that's how I got into it.
I love that. And so you get a sense as to if people follow you off the back of the podcast, it's like what you post, you can see that now you've said the story, you can sort of join the dots as to what it did for you and how you want to
Yeah.
share that. And I would also like to ask, have you noticed people that you work with, if it's over multiple preps, etc., or
Mm.
multiple seasons, the impact, and this is something I guess I theorize in my own mind, and I do have this through personal anecdote and through working with clients, but the impact of working on your mind, how that can actually help your look on stage, I believe is huge. I don't know if you've experienced this much, seeing that firsthand, or if you've had that yourself at all.
Absolutely. I mean, just the confidence, the confidence that you feel, that self-assurance, like you know what you're doing, you know why you're doing it, why it's helping you. It's very different when you come in with that kind of attitude and mindset, compared to, I hope I win, and does everyone who looks better than me, and that sort of thing. Like I said, it depends on that, whether it's more internal motivation or or external. So, I feel like as people, to really persist in this journey, I mean, it's not easy, so not many people do another comp after their first comp, but if they do, it's because they have found something in there that lit a fire inside them, that they just want to keep going, keep improving, not just physically, mentally. They see the value that it's added to their life.
Yeah, because it is, isn't it? It's like if you were to say what's the value it brings and maybe what are the negatives, for a lot of us, it's going to be like there's no negatives. I just love this thing. And when it comes to, we actually spoke about it near the start. When it comes to when people are, trying to communicate with those around them and just branching into it slightly more as well,
Mm,
if you are so passionate about it, like we've just spoken about, both of us are, and there's going to be listeners.
mm,
Actually, if someone doesn't share that passion and they show that they sort of understand, as it were, in commas, would you say that there's any sort of techniques and tools to keep that fire lit even when people around you aren't sort of getting it and they're like, yeah, that sounds okay, and you're there sort of like, wow, this thing, to not sort of dishearten you, if you know what I mean, and see where I'm going with that one.
absolutely. I can totally relate to this. I think the thing is that, like I said, you need to be super crystal clear why you are competing. If you need to write it down, put it up somewhere to remind yourself. Um, every workout that you do, every meal you have, remind yourself this is why I'm doing it. This is making me better. This is helping me be the person that I want to be. So that you're so clear on it that it's so non-negotiable. What anybody thinks really doesn't matter. It's just a bit of random background noise. That's all it is. And then the other thing is, of course, if you know that there are certain people that either don't support you or don't share that enthusiasm, don't talk to them about it. Pick and choose who you talk to about it, right? Why put yourself in those situations that are actually going to drag you down? On the contrary, surround yourself with like-minded people, probably at the gym, or people that maybe you do connect with on Instagram, maybe fellow competitors, and you can, I've met with some and we practice posing together, just like you can meet people and really hype each other up and get excited together. And they're the people you want to surround yourself with.
It's different, doesn't it, when you're with the people we've actually got. So I've got my first seminar coming up for the podcast, and super, super exciting after obviously 3 years of doing it. And it's like, I know that it's just going to be this hive of like excitement, and and it's actually as
So
well,
good.
it sort of feeds into, and this is a good sort of segue to wrap up today, as it were, with the post-show phase and the
Yeah.
excitement you can get actually from spending time with your people, whether that's you've competed, whether you've posed with someone, whether you've, and then you're sort of going back to your normal life and your normal job, etc. Almost like the
Mm,
blues.
mm,
That's obviously going to be associated with, to various different things there.
mm,
But what would you say? Have you got any sort of standout tips for anyone that's in that post-show phase, anyone that's maybe
mm,
in a later post-show phase where
mm.
they're hit again, as it were? What would you say your sort of standout things are if we're in this phase of the blues, or whatever we
Yes.
call it? That would be really nice actually to sort of have your insight there, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I think the first thing is to really fix your environment. So, what I mean by that is if there are people or things that are important to you that you've neglected, to get back to doing those. If you're in a relationship, get back to date nights. If there's family, friends you haven't been able to spend much time with and you want to get back to doing that just to give you some of that balance back, is really important. As I said at the beginning, you're not just a bodybuilder. There's a lot more that makes up your life. And the way I kind of think about it is if you think of like your life as like a pie chart that's made up of different chunks. You might have your bodybuilding journey in there, and then relationship, maybe family, maybe some hobbies, your work or career, maybe there's study in there. As you get closer to being on stage, to the time that you're going to be on stage, the pie chart, that takes a bigger chunk, the bodybuilding journey, right? Gets more shaded, and that's fair enough. That's part of it. But as when the curtains are down, you need to start embracing those other chunks. So that's the first thing, just to get back to that kind of sense of normality. And then the other things are, just to watch, obviously, your relationship with food. If you're hopefully still working with your coach, and they're giving you, reverse diet plan, just to do that slowly, slowly. Your body's going to be quite sensitive. So just I think acceptance that, things are going to feel a bit different. You're going from this high and this glamour to kind of, yeah, this sort of, okay, normality, back to, yeah, routine. But, it's not so much, it doesn't have to be so black and white. You're bodybuilder for a reason. So you go back to the lifestyle. You love the lifestyle, hopefully. So, you go back to your training, your meals, but you fix your environment. You spend more time with other people. You set a new intention for this phase. So if you're going to continue in the competing journey, then and you need to be building or bulking, then okay, set that's the intention now. So really be clear that this is what the intention is for this phase. Maybe there's another intention. Maybe there's some career goals that you really want to focus on now and put energy into. So set those intentions as well. So just having a focus and getting back to other important parts of your life are important.
Remembering you're a human as well. I
Yeah.
often reference it as who's Sarah, because you might have
Mm.
had it. I used to get introduced, Sarah, she's a bodybuilder. And I'm like, I'm a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
That identity thing then ties into it.
Yes.
But also it's sometimes you've almost got to see that as like it's so different to what people are used to. It's actually a huge compliment a lot of the time, rather than it be like, oh God, it's
Yes. Yeah.
like the bodybuilding. So I can take that. Now, of course,
Mhm.
thank you for your time today. I really have enjoyed talking to you a little bit more about some of the things I touched on already, but from
Mm.
your point of view is extremely useful. Now, if anyone's listening and they would like to reach out or potentially look at your free pre-prep checklist or the masterclass, is Instagram the best place to reach you?
Yes, yeah, that's right. And there is a link there to my website as well where you can read more about me or email me if you prefer from there. So, yeah, that will be the best place.
Perfect. So I'll put that in the description. And of course,
Thank you.
if anyone wants to reach out to you on DM potentially, if that was the sort of first step, I'm sure you're open to that
Mhm.
as well.
Yes.
That would be really good for people to know. And if they want to tag us on the stories, of course, when we are live, then go ahead, guys. But thank you, Effie, and guys, I will speak to you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye.